You're now watching a clip from the Inspired by show. You can watch the full episode on our YouTube channel or listen on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to head over there, leave us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed it, and follow the show.
So I knew then in that moment that we weren't under attack. I knew that I had detonated an improvised explosive device. And the reality of me surviving this situation was very, very slim. Now, if you could write down on paper what is the worst possible scenario you can imagine to evacuate a casualty from in a battlefield, then this was it. Right, so we're on high ground. This little shallow bow that I was in, we were working with some American Special Forces guys, and one of their jobs in a situation like this is to go in after and clear the area, and they write a report on it. So this little shallow bow that me and the lads were in was now, I think it was 12 feet deep by 15 feet around. There were 6 other improvised explosive devices around me, and they were anti-personnel mines with the warhead of a 107mm shoulder-launched rocket on top. So this was a pretty tricky situation to try and get me out of. It was made slightly more tricky by the fact that the way we are trained in that situation is to override every instinct you have as a human to try and help one of your friends, and we're trained not to go running in to give first aid because of the risk that you pose to yourself and to the casualty if you set off another device. So I was laying there in this huge crater surrounded by these other improvised explosive devices, bleeding out, knowing that my friends aren't going to come rushing in to rescue me because that's not what we're trained to do. So part of me thought, this is it. There's no way you're going to survive this. There was just too much blood and fluid coming out. Coupled with the fact that I knew it was going to be a lengthy evacuation, I thought, okay, this is my time. Now, the other part of me, at the back of my mind, it's hard to explain. I never genuinely thought I was going to die. I knew that those other 7 men would do whatever it took to get me out of there, and they would perform to the highest level, and they absolutely did. Like not one of them broke protocol. It's one thing being a casualty, right? But it's the other thing being the guys that have got to rescue the casualty and having to actually be in that situation and not freeze and not go running in and to stick to everything you've been trained to do. And they all did it perfectly. Like one of them was straight on the radio to headquarters calling in a helicopter and a medic. I had a 19-year-old who I think was 8 weeks out of training on his stomach. And what his job was, as the guy closest to me, was to crawl with a bayonet, prod the ground, and then mark a safe route for when the medic gets to me to make sure that there are no other devices on that path. There was another guy coordinating all-round defense in case there was a small arms follow-up attack. And every single one of them just did it perfectly. And because of that, when the medic got to me, he got to me very, very quickly. Started putting tourniquets on my legs. He got me to do the tourniquet up on my arm to keep me conscious because I was fading out at this point. And then when he deemed me stable, he pulled out a stretcher, which was like a tablecloth with some handles on because of this huge hole that we were in. And then he put his hands under my armpits and he dragged me over to the stretcher. Now that was the first time since triggering the device that I felt any pain. So he put me down and I looked down to my right leg where the pain came from. And there was like a thin piece of rope or string covered in blood and sand and dirt coming out of my right leg. And so I followed it and it went into my boot. So again, I don't know why I did this, but I picked my boot up and I had a look inside and my foot was still in there. And I guess this piece of string or rope was like a nerve or a tendon. So where he had dragged me and with the weight of the boot and the foot, it had pulled this tendon and caused the pain. So he then had to take what was left of my right leg, what was left of my right arm, kind of just scoop them up and put them on my stomach and then evacuate me out of this huge crater off this high ground down to the main dirt road and put me into the back of a vehicle. Now when the vehicle was driving to the helicopter landing site, it started going up a hill and the ground in Afghanistan is that there are no tarmac roads where we were. It was very, very pothole laden and just rough terrain. So on the way up the hill to get into the front entrance of camp, the guy driving had to be quite aggressive with the way he was doing things. And he hit a pothole and the medic fell out the back. And then I fell out the back. But as the bottom of my back hit the tailgate of the vehicle, the driver swung around, reached out, grabbed whatever he could grab to kind of hold me in the vehicle, and ended up grabbing the femur bone that was in my right leg. Now, he left the medic because that other group of men that we were with were at the bottom of the hill. So there was 8 heavily armed men there to protect him. He drove me to the helicopter landing site. And the last thing that I can remember is a Chinook helicopter landing, a sandstorm that's created from the propeller blades, and then the heat of this exhaust beating down on me in the back of this vehicle. And that was a minute when I blacked out, and then later found out that the medics had declared me clinically dead at the scene.
Wow.
Intense. An intense Christmas.
Oh my gosh. Well, Mark, thank you for sharing that so vividly and openly. And I think it's one of those things that when you go through it, no one can ever imagine what it's like going through that.